Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with your host, Christina Nitchman.
This is your host, Christina Nitchman. Each week, Savvy runs weekly broadcasts providing entrepreneurs and successful individuals a platform to express their dreams, hopes, lessons learned, expertise, and wisdom with the world. Our first guest today is Dwayna C. Welch. She is the author of Love Factually, 10 Proven Steps from I Wish to I Do. Today she shares the common myths around love relationships and how men and women view relationships differently. Find out more about Dwayna and her wonderful new book at lovesciencemedia.com. Our second guest is Michael McManus, founder of Gethrr. Gethrr is a non-profit community movement dedicated to serving the needs of others through a $1 membership program. Find out more about Gethrr at gethrr.org. Hi, Dwayna. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you?
I'm doing great, Christina. How are you today?
I'm doing fabulous, and I'm so excited to have you out here today. You are talking about a subject that I found super fascinating some 10 or 11 years ago when I was looking for a life partner. I was done with the so-called dating scene. I wanted to find the one and only Mr. Right, and I read a slew of self-help books in the area of love and got very little helpful feedback in the area. But you've come up with a fabulous book called Love Factually, 10 Proven Steps from I Wish to I Do. And I loved it because it was really spot on with a lot of things and showed me where I had been kind of messing up in the area of love. But before we go there, share with our audience a little bit about your backstory and what led you to working in the realm of love and writing your book.
Well, sure. You kind of told my story when you told your own, Christina, because just as you were saying before we got on air that you wished you'd had this book a long time ago, I wished I'd had this book a long time ago. Basically, I went through a terrible heartbreak, and I was in graduate school getting my PhD in memory and aging. I didn't get a PhD in anything related to this. Mm-hmm. But while I was getting my heart broken and getting my PhD, it occurred to me that maybe there was someone who had studied how humans mate and relate. Maybe there was an academic who studied this, and I really needed this. Mm-hmm. And it turned out there were a lot of academics who had done really excellent studies of what makes relationships tick, why they succeed, why they fail, what predicts success and failure, and specific behaviors that would lead to success or failure. Mm-hmm. And so I initially amassed this information in a purely selfish way. I just wanted to stop hurting. I think people are ready to change when they've hurt long enough, and I had hurt long enough, and I was ready to change. Mm-hmm. So I changed the way that I did things, and I wound up very happy. And then people started coming to me and asking me to help them. Mm-hmm. So I had clients, and I still do have clients, mostly via Skype because most of them don't happen to live where I live. Mm-hmm. But then having married the right person, one of the things that happens when you marry the right person is they encourage you to be your best self and capitalize on all your skills and abilities and take risks. Mm-hmm. They've got your back, right?
Yes.
So my husband said, you know all this stuff that has made us so happy, and I want everybody to be that happy, don't you? Why don't you write a book? Mm. And I said, oh, no. Our daughter's really little, and I don't want to take the time away from her. And he said, all right, well, if you're not going to write a book, at least some of this information needs to be available to the public right now, today. He said, really, people really need this. And you know that there's no other source for it because none of the academics are writing about this. I mean, they write for journals, but they're not writing, for anybody else. And so he said, why don't you start a blog? I mean, he really pushed me every week. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? So anyway, I started a blog, and I did that for 5 years before I felt like my daughter was old enough for me to really dive in and do a book. And so the book is Love Factually, and it's been out since January of 2015, 1 year now. And it's been extremely rewarding to hear how the same information that completely changed my life has transformed the lives of a lot of women and also men. That really surprised me that half the readers are men, but they are. They like the science.
Yeah, and we really want to understand what's really going on here. And we had talked before the interview. I went through this during the dating scene. We really want to feel as men and women, or at least women do in particular, that we are on the same playing front as men. That we have the exact same strength. That there is no differences between a man and a woman, and we should go out there and go into the dating world just like a man. Like if men can go out and get a bunch of women and have fun in the dating sex life, so shall we, and it's totally okay, and it's the 21st century thing to do. But your research showed that there are definitely differences biologically and psychologically compared for women and men. Share a little bit about what you learned.
Well, so I think you make a great point when you say that we're in the 21st century and we can do these things. And I want to be very clear. I am a feminist and I'm very, very liberal. I have a PhD. That's not something that most really hardcore conservatives are willing to do. So it's not like I expect to be paid less in the workplace. In fact, every place I've worked, I've insisted on being paid exactly the same as my male colleagues. I expect the same amount of respect. I expect that if the men are being called doctor, I'm being called doctor. So it's not like I'm saying that research shows that women should accept being less than, but research shows that women are usually different than men when it comes to what I call the human mating ritual. It's easier to think about this if you think about peacocks. People get really uptight about people, but then they can think about animals and they get a little bit less uptight about it. If a peacock wants any opportunity to make a copy of himself, which is the whole right side of our brains is unconscious, and a large part of it is dedicated to making sure that we make a copy of ourselves. Even if you use birth control, even if you think, oh my gosh, the worst thing in the world that could happen to me is if I got pregnant or got somebody else pregnant, your right side of your brain doesn't care about that. All it wants is for you to survive and reproduce. And so it's going to, for example, one way you know that is even people who never want children still want sex. I mean, it's directing your behavior to do the things that would lead to children. And because of the markedly different way that men and women had to go about achieving the survival and reproduction goals in the ancient past, we still carry forward that cave person way of thinking. And men have a different cave person way of thinking than men do. So the peacock has its own mating psychology. It has its own peacock courtship ritual. And in that ritual, it has to raise its tail and it has to walk very slowly toward the female. It really can't walk fast because that tail's really heavy. And it vibrates the tail and it hopes that she looks at him and then it hopes that she allows him to have sex with her. Because the female has a choice. Peacocks don't rape females. The females choose the males. So it's a courtship. Just like in a real human courtship, this isn't a rape. This is a choice the female is making. And the male is shaking his tail feathers. The problem is that today a lot of peahens in the human world are not asking for any tail feather shaking. They're just going ahead and giving up the sex without any courtship ritual from the male. And what that does is it makes the male think, we know from science, wow, you don't have any value. You're low status. You don't respect yourself and I don't respect you either. Now, is that fair? No, we're just doing what he did. I mean, we don't hold it against him. Why should he hold it against us? Well, because this isn't about the 21st century and it's not about logic. It's about our ancestral inherited mating urges. So to give you an idea of where those come from, let's say that in the ancient past, there were men who liked all different kinds of women. Some men liked a woman with a curvy figure, and some men liked a woman who had a straight figure. It just was straight all the way down. And some men liked a woman who was shaped like a barrel or an apple. And so let's say that man A, he only likes women who are shaped perfectly round. He doesn't like, in the middle. He doesn't like any curve except perfect roundness. Well, those women are pregnant, or they're ill. Or they're too old to procreate. So how many copies did he wind up making of himself by having that preference?
Not a heck of a lot.
He didn't make any. He made 0 copies of himself because these women were not fertile. It's true that men are endlessly fertile, but women aren't. We have very narrow windows in our lives when we're fertile. And in the ancient past, that would have been much truer. Think about it. Women didn't go into fertility till perhaps the age of 18, not 12 to 14.
Wow.
They were much older when they were fertile. And then they would get pregnant within usually half a year, and then they would nurse for 5 years. So they weren't fertile during I mean, really, and then they would be not fertile when they were in their middle age. So they didn't have many times that they could get pregnant. A guy who preferred a woman who already looked pregnant was not going to make any copies of himself.
Wow. Now, can I ask you, why was the menstruation starting so much later back then? Why was that?
Nutrition and parasites
Oh, okay.
and other microbes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People weren't as healthy as they are now.
Got it. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. The better health, as societies have become healthier and healthier, menstruation has started sooner and sooner, and height has gotten taller and taller.
Yes, I've noticed that.
Yeah. If you go to any ancient ruins in Europe, you'll see that the doorways are really, really short because the people were in the 4-foot something range, not the 5 and 6 foot something range.
Wow, that's fascinating. So also what I noticed reading your book is I made a lot of faux pas in my dating when I was dating, and that basically was a lot of times trying to feel like I was on front with a guy in that, like, say we go out to dinner and I'm like, well, I'm going to pay for this because I'm a woman and I can pay for my own stuff. I don't need them. But the I don't need them kind of mindset would often push guys away.
Yes.
Why is this?
So going back to our guy who only likes barrel-shaped women, his friend only likes hourglass-shaped women.
Mm-hmm.
His friend has many, many children because the hourglass-shaped women are fertile. Mm-hmm. In fact, there is a human universal. Men universally, regardless of which country or culture they are from or how young or old they are, universally, they find most sexy the 0.7 waist to hip ratio. But they're not consciously aware that there's a mathematical ratio that they gravitate towards. Scientists just have discovered that it's absolutely true. It's not like he thinks, she has a waist that is precisely 30% smaller than her hips. She is therefore fertile and fecund. I shall tap that. He doesn't think that. He just knows, hey, I know what I want. Well, something else he wants to beat his chest and be the provider and the protector. Mm-hmm. And if you tell him you're picking up the check, mm-hmm. you have taken his job away. Mm-hmm. He's no longer, remember, our mating psychology does not come from a time when we have 401k plans and Target's on the corner and Starbucks is on the next corner and we've got diapers and formula and clean sheets or any sheets at all. Our mating psychology comes from a time when we lived in caves and language was just beginning to occur and religion and art were just starting out more than 45,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. Your mating psychology is not substantially different from what it would have been back then. And so in that environment, women cannot entirely provide for themselves. They can't do it because physically they're not able, especially since they have babies. Mm-hmm. They have young people that they have to schlep with them everywhere. And they're just not able to do everything like we can now. Mm-hmm. And in that environment, a male who wanted lots of casual sex and wanted one wife was going to leave a lot of copies of himself behind. And a woman who wanted that same thing was probably going to fail. Mm-hmm. Because think about it, if a woman has access to 1,000 fertile men in a year, she can have one baby, maybe two if she has twins. Mm-hmm. If a man has access to 1,000 fertile women in a year, he can make 1,000 copies.
Whoa, yeah.
You know, the math tells you right there how it is that men would have evolved a preference for variety and women would have evolved a preference largely for monogamy. You know, in studies of young women that have had casual sex, more than half of those women say that the reason they had sex so quickly was to get a boyfriend. It wasn't casual for them.
Yes. Yeah, I totally get it. And they're thinking, because we have this deep emotional bond when we have intimate sex that we feel immediately for the other person, and I'm sure you can talk about the science behind that. And we feel this strong attachment, whereas it can be the opposite for guys. They don't form an attachment. I've heard guys say, no, it was just a doing thing. It was like me going to play sports with the guys.
Yeah. So a scientist named Townsend did some really interesting, maybe a little depressing for me, kind of research where he asked men and women who had a friends with benefits arrangement 2 questions. The first question was, and in other words, 100% of the participants were men and women who had an arrangement where they were just having sex with a friend without any hope of anything else happening. That was the deal that they were in. Mm-hmm. And so he asked these men and women individually to give their answer to these questions. Question number 1 is would you like it? I'm sorry. Is this an acceptable partner for you long term?
Hmm.
And men and women alike basically said, ew, no, that's why we're just having sex. We're not right for each other. The sex is good, but that's it. And then he said, how easy or difficult is it for you to remain emotionally detached from your casual sex partner? And that was very interesting. 75% of the men said, oh, yeah, it's totally easy. I don't have any problem with that.
Hmm.
Just like what you're saying, kind of, I'm going
Yeah.
to the sports arena for an hour. And of course, that means that a hefty percentage of men actually did find themselves becoming more attracted. That's 25%. But 75% said, no, it's casual. That's all it is.
Hmm.
When he asked women that same question, the figures were exactly reversed. 3/4 of women said, I know Steve isn't right for me, but I'm kind of getting attached to him. They
Ah.
said it was very difficult for them to maintain emotional distance. 1/4 of the women said, oh, yeah, no problem.
Hmm.
But again, it's very interesting that you've got 75% of men remaining detached, 75% of women getting attached in the
Mm.
exact same scenario with the exact same deal of casual sex. It's not usually as casual for women.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, Duana, but for me, when I was dating, my number one thing is I would meet a guy and I would latch on to them like one date and they seemed like a really cool guy on paper, or we just met and we had a cup of coffee and they seemed really cool. And I was like already planning our trip down memory lane,
Oh, yeah.
10 kids, picket fence, all this jazz. Why do women do that? I mean, I know we're kind of predispositioned to wanting one guy and settling down, but why do we limit our opportunity? I mean, because there's a lot of guys out there.
Well, I think that that's an interplay of biology and culture. So, biologically, in the ancient past, women who were not picky about who they had sex with paid a very high price.
Mm.
If they didn't have a long-term mating mentality, then their families might kill them, might injure them, because children take a lot of resources.
Ah, yes.
And so if your provider and protector up and skedaddled, what are you going to do?
Mm.
And so women, and there wasn't any birth control, remember. So women really, if they weren't careful about who they mated with, they could wind up with early death for themselves or their children. Women simply, again, they could not do all the provision and protection themselves. True, they had a tribe around them. Their husband or mate wasn't the only guy.
Mm.
But, if your own mate doesn't want to provide for you, what is the guarantee that your whole tribe wants to do it?
Yeah.
They have
Wow.
other children to provide for. They're not necessarily going to say yes to yours. So all indications are, even in tribal societies today, that women who are very choosy and very careful about who they mate with, being careful, I mean, to mate with someone who's going to stay afterward and who's going to stay while those children are young enough that she needs protection and provision.
Mm.
Those women win. They cast more of their genes forward and more copies of themselves are made, and they are more successful at surviving and reproducing. And so their psychology of be careful who you choose gets carried forward to more and more and more children. And today, everywhere in the world, most women are careful about this. Now, where this changes in is in modern society, there are a lot of cultural messages that say that that's a dumb message, that we don't need that message anymore, that women don't need to be careful because we have birth control, and which we do. We have birth control, and we have government assistance, and we have other things. We have a tribe that's more like the government now that will help us out.
Mm.
But it still continues to be true, even in countries with really strong social safety nets like Scandinavia. Scandinavia is not a country, it's a part of the world, but they have very similar social systems where children are very well provided for by the state, even if there's no father of record. Even there, children are much more likely to be impoverished, to have fewer social and economic economic and academic opportunities, and to do far worse in life than children where their mother was picky to find a man who would stick around and provide. So it's still an issue even today. And so what you're talking about, though, Christina, is what I call the immediate marriage mentality. A lot of women, because they want commitment, feel like if I just show a man commitment from the very first date, he will also want commitment. And this is an error that I call mating centrism, the mistake of imposing your own mating psychology on the opposite sex. The opposite sex has a different mating psychology. Men in the ancient past did not have to be careful about who they had sex with. In fact, it served them to be totally indiscriminate. Studies today show that women have higher standards for a one-night stand than they do for a husband. Higher standards.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Well, not really. Think
Huh?
about the ancient past. If
Uh-huh.
I'm a cave woman and I have sex with this guy that I'm
Yeah.
probably never going to see again, he better, by God, have something to offer in case I get pregnant. And that something he can offer is superior genes, where my kids will have a better shot at growing up simply because he had better genes than the other guys had. And can I tell that? By looking at him.
So
The
if he's
better
hot and in good shape and healthy and all that.
Yes, better
Uh-huh.
looking guys, I'm sorry to say, beauty's not just skin deep. It shows something about our genetics. And so, yeah, when women do have one night stands, a lot of times it's with a guy who looks like a rock star or actually is a rock star in his
Yeah.
field. Think
Wow.
about it. If when women have one night stands, who do they choose to offer themselves to? Usually not the same guy that they would have married. It's a guy with way more status than that.
Mm.
So women are very picky. These same studies show that men admit that they will or have had sex with women who had mental retardation, were unconscious, or were barely breathing, or had what they considered low morals or
Mhm.
low social skills. They're men are very discriminate when it comes to choosing a wife,
Yes.
but when it comes to just choosing a sexual partner, they have almost no discrimination at all, most of them. And again, that's not my opinion.
Mhm.
That's what a ton of science, by the way, all conducted by males, shows.
And here's what really fascinates me, Duana, is I've had a number of guy friends who are really anti marriage, and they kind of feel women are just out to get them, their money, their status, and I'm like, but don't you want to be the provider? Now, isn't it maybe that you're just choosing a gal who's maybe a gold digger and doesn't really have your best interest in hand, and isn't so much about tell me a little bit about that, because I've heard that from quite a few men in their 40 to 50 range who've maybe gone through divorce.
I'd like to start by noting that these same men want a young, beautiful woman. So, to the extent they're accusing women of being shallow, they are at least equivalently shallow. None of these men are willing to be with somebody who's very old and very unappealing.
Or someone their age, perhaps, even. Yeah.
Or even their age. Research shows that by the time a man's in his 50s, if he can marry somebody 19 years younger, he'll do it. And so what that is men value what I call the two F's. Women value the two P's, men value the two F's. Men are looking for fertility and fidelity. And how they judge your fertility is, are you young and hot? Because if you're young and hot, you can make a lot of babies. Again, that's not conscious. All they care about is young and hot. But what that means is you can make copies of his genes for him. So he's not conscious of part B. He just knows young and hot. He's also looking for fidelity. Fidelity is conveyed by the woman's behavior in terms of sexual elusiveness. Does she call him? Okay. If she's chasing him, how valuable could she be? Does she ask him on a date? How valuable could she be? Not very. Did she pay for the date? What's wrong with her? Did she offer sex or have sex with me right away? She must be doing this with every guy. He has an emotional mechanism that is intended to keep him from winding up making copies of some other guy's genes while he unwittingly raises those children. So he also has a lot of physical mechanisms that protect him from genetic oblivion. For example, human males make more sperm than virtually any other organism on the planet for their size. They have larger testicles for their size. There's some debate in the scientific community. They may or may not have ninja sperm, that their purpose is to strangle other sperm from other men. The purpose is not to impregnate anyone. It's to do battle in a woman's reproductive tract. All of these physical mechanisms, all they're there for is to try to make sure he casts his genes forward and does not get cuckolded into casting some other guy's genes forward and raising some other man's children. So, we women have a genetic slam dunk. When we have sex and we get pregnant, we know whose baby it is. It's ours. We made a copy of ourselves. Men in the ancient past never knew that for sure. They never knew for sure that it was theirs. And so they developed, again, not consciously, this was an evolutionary process, but a number of safeguards developed to help men assure that the children really would be theirs. And one of them is emotional disengagement if a woman has sex very quickly. This is a global phenomenon. Women, if a guy's trying to have sex with you, all it means is he's trying to have sex with you. It doesn't mean he actually likes you. Remember, studies show that male standards for sex when they first meet you are so low that you could be mentally retarded and passed out drunk, and he would still have sex with you.
Wow, that is quite that is quite telling.
It's not a
Yeah,
compliment.
I love that you mentioned that. But for me, because I actually chose to stay celibate for me during my dating, but for
Yeah.
me, I did everything else wrong that you mentioned in your book, which is trying to be the provider, pay for my own meal, maybe even his if he was a little low on cash, being overly accommodating. And one thing I see women do that's really kind of sad now, watching it from the outside looking in, now that I have a wonderful life partner, is that my life partner Brian is waving his hand because I keep saying life partner. He's like, tell people I'm a guy. But one thing I see women doing that really just breaks my heart is putting themselves out there so much where they'll sit by the phone all night long waiting after one date with a guy for him to call her and just putting everything on their life on hold. And
Yeah. So you're bringing up a great point. Being hard to get is, let me back up a little bit. Women and men have a fundamentally different lens through which they view all social interaction. Women view social interaction as an opportunity to tend and befriend. We try to put people on an equal level. For example, my dentist right now says, call me Josie. You know what? My male dentist never said that. They said, call me Dr. So-and-so. Josie is trying to put me on her level. The man is trying to have a one-up, one-down relationship. And so men live in hierarchy and women live on the same plane. Women try to create bonds of friendship and equality, and men try to be one-up in social interactions. What's happening when a woman doesn't value herself? And that's what's happening when you wait all night by the phone. You're not valuing your right to have a good time without this guy. You're not trusting that you're desirable enough that a man's going to work his way into your life. You're thinking you have to make it so easy for him because you're really not that valuable. If you give him the message that you're going to be that easy for him because you are not valuable, he's going to believe that message because he already is primed to live and think in hierarchy. And a man who thinks that he is one up compared to you, that's not a position of respect. The position he's got to be in is a position of one down. Men like admiring and respecting women and thinking they're not quite good enough for them. They enjoy that. When you talk about these guys who say, well, I never want to get married. I don't want to provide for anyone. I don't want to protect anyone. Men don't generically want to provide and protect. They want to provide and protect for the woman they love. If they haven't even met her yet, that doesn't sound like a good idea. It sounds like a job. When they meet the right woman, they are all about it because suddenly it's no longer a job. It's their privilege. It's their joy. It's not a job. It's a joy. Women kind of generically want commitment, but men do not generically want commitment. Men generically usually want sexual variety. They want commitment after they've met the right one, not before.
Wow. And what you just said there is so pertinent to when I met my beautiful Brian, my life partner, because he was totally like, oh, I don't know, he was one down, as you were mentioning, admiring me. And he's been my greatest supporter. Like when you mentioned Vic, your husband, what a supporter he's been. And he's just like totally out there getting you to live bigger and greater and be your best self. And that's how I think as a woman, you can really say, okay, now this is Mr. Right, the one for me, because he really sees the all of me and more than I can see in myself.
Yes, and how you know that a man sees you that way is you are hard to get and he works his way in until you feel trust for him instead of trusting him with no evidence, which is what happens when, and I say this, by the way, Christina, as a woman who did it wrong a lot. Yeah. I'm not like speaking from Mount Olympus, oh, I did it all right and it all worked for me and you guys are just, trash. I'm saying I screwed up a lot. And when I didn't value myself, men treated me as if I were not valuable. And when I did value myself by being hard to get, men treated me as if I was platinum encrusted with diamonds. And I was the same woman both times. But it's just like the peacock. Okay, let's say there was a peacock who achieved conscious thought. And he thought, you know what, this is stupid. This tail is huge. I'm an easy prey for predators. I'm gonna get somebody to cut off my tail, and I'm gonna be safe here, and I'm not gonna get eaten by anything, and I'm not gonna shake a tail feather anymore because that's stupid. I mean, I am who I am, and the females should just love me for who I am. You hear humans say a version of this a
Yes.
lot. Well, I should be able to behave any way I want. They should just love me for who I
Yeah.
am. So this peacock goes out. He is who he is, and he never, ever gets any sexual action. Because you have to give the opposite sex the signals that it needs in order to activate their mating psychology. You must do this. And women, those signals for men are you must be elusive or else his short-term mating psychology will be activated. He'll want to have sex with you, but he will not want to commit to you.
Yeah. And you won't be the type of person he'll want to take home to mom and pa. He'll be like, you're not the marrying sort of bring home to the family type of gal.
Yeah, and I'm not just talking about sex. Like you mentioned that you were sexually celibate while you were dating, but still dating wasn't working for you because you were offering everything else and making it easy for them. It's too simple to say be hard to get sexually. I mean, here's what I mean. Be really enthusiastic, be really kind, be really excited to hear from them. Like if we're talking about Brian here when you're first dating. Oh, Brian, great to hear from you when he calls. Okay, you're not being a bitch, you're not being aloof either. But if he calls you on a Friday night, you just don't answer the phone because you know what? On Friday night, I don't care if you're filing your nails or washing your hair. You have other plans on Friday night than answering the phone for this guy for whom you were just an option when nothing else was happening.
Exactly, because now it's like if you didn't call me in the beginning of the week or in the middle of the week, a minimum, to say, hey, I can't wait to see you. My whole next weekend, all I can think about is I want to be with you. And you wait till a Friday, that means you had other plans. You're like, all those other plans are busted, so I'll use you as my last resort.
You know, and I had to learn that the hard way, that being hard to get means being friendly, being enthusiastic about the guy, but not being available unless I was truly available on my terms.
Yes.
And by available, I mean I didn't offer to pick up the tab.
Yes.
I didn't offer to be available the last minute. I didn't ask him out. I didn't accept it when he asked me out at the very last minute. Any behavior of his that indicated you're an option, but I'm really cruising around possibly for something better. My answer was no, I like myself more than that.
Yeah. And here's something I did. When I even started dating Brian, he wanted really, really hard to please me and do stuff for me. And I would say, no, don't go out of your way. It's okay. Because I would feel like, I don't need that from you. It's okay. And then would you send the message like, well, you're not worthy because I'm trying to do stuff for you and you're turning me down.
That's right. One of the signs that a man is really into you, again, men do not generically want to provide for women. They want to provide for a woman that they're falling in love with. The fact that he was trying to shake his tail feathers and provide for you shows he was falling in love with you. And you're saying, no, put your tail down. You don't need to do that. And he's like, okay, you're short-circuiting the whole program here. I don't get it. What am I doing wrong? Why are you taking my job away from me? I'm trying to impress you here. How can I impress you if you won't let me?
Yes.
What's wrong with you?
Exactly.
And of course, all of this is non-conscious. People don't have the language for this because this is right brain activity. It's one thing I try to emphasize in my book is that your mating psychology that you inherited from ancient ancestry is running the show, and you have no power over it until you know what the mating psychology is telling you, and until you know what it is telling your intended gender. If you like women, what is it telling other women? If you like men, what is it telling men? If you're a man who likes women, what is a woman's mating psychology like? Until you understand both your and your intended's mating psychology, you're at a huge disadvantage because you're not aware that the current cultural messages are largely telling you to do things that will amount to the same thing that would happen if the peacock cut off his tail feathers and refused to dance anymore. He's not going to get anywhere.
Absolutely. Well,
and so, yeah, that's what I found too. And so once I learned that, I thought, okay, so I'm valuing myself. I have high enough self-esteem that if a guy calls me at the last minute, I just don't answer my phone. And then if he calls me a couple days later, I answer. And if I can't sound happy to talk to him, then apparently I don't like him very much. There's just, don't be bitchy. Just don't talk to people you don't like anymore. Don't lead them on. But if I really like this guy, I'm going to answer, and I'm going to answer with a smile on my voice. I'm going to say, hey, Vic, how you doing? And if he says, what were you doing 2 nights ago? You know what? He's not my husband. Right. He doesn't have a right to know that information. Cheeky little bastard.
Yeah.
I
was busy. I don't need to tell you anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I would always say, because women have trained men to think that men have an immediate right to know everything we're doing, and how we have trained them to do that is by dropping our whole life for them from the first date, right?
Yeah.
A lot of us have done that. I've done that in the past. they've gotten kind of cheeky, and they immediately feel like they have total access to your thoughts, your behaviors, everything you're doing. And so what I would say is, in a real flirty way, well, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill
Yes,
you.
I thought that was
And
funny.
and then I steadily refused to answer any more questions. And it drove them crazy because the ones that liked me assumed that I was out on a date with another guy, which sometimes was true and sometimes wasn't. But I didn't tell
Yeah,
them.
not their business to know.
Not their
Yeah.
business. That's not their business until we've established a commitment of some
That's
kind.
right. Well, this has been so fascinating. We could go on for hours. This is such a fascinating topic. But let the audience know where they can find out more about you, get in touch with you.
Oh, absolutely, Christina. So you can find about more about me and my book at Amazon if you look up my first name, Duana, or if you look up the book title, Love Factually with an F. I know Amazon has some freebies on there. You can get a free audio chapter, a free printed chapter, each ebook chapter. And then also you can go to my website and get the whole first chapter for free at lovefactually.co, lovefactually.co. And the book is available in audio, ebook, and paperback versions.
Yay! Well, I truly enjoyed reading your book, and I want to thank you for coming to share your insights today on love with our savvy audience. Thank you so much, Duana.
Thank you very much, Christina. It's been a pleasure.
Now, here's our interview with Michael McManus. Hi, Michael. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you today?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm so glad you reached out to us. You were doing some wonderful work in the world with your non-for-profit Gethrr, and you also have two other businesses that keep you guys running. You have a wonderfully inspirational story. Share with our audience a little bit about your background, how you came to creating Gethrr.
Sure. So it kind of comes from where I started with my journey with my wife and our children. And we found ourselves in a position where I was part of a failed startup. It wasn't failed, it was actually sold. And I ended up getting nothing. So I helped build a business for 9 months. Went through all of my savings in the meantime while my wife was pregnant with twins.
Wow.
And I think I was actually only paid $11,000 in 9 months.
Wow.
And
yeah, that's tough.
so I got a phone call and they said the business was sold, and I had got nothing. They're like, just to let you know. So I had 3-month-old twins at that time, and it was also the same time that all my loans came out of deferment for school. So then I added another $900 a month in bills, and we were just in a really bad spot because I didn't get much support from my family. And Melissa and I were at a point where we knew it couldn't get any worse, and we needed to do something different because I also wasn't able to hold a job very well at the time. So every couple months I would literally come home early and we would just look at each other, and she'd say, all right, let's go get the resume up. And Melissa's parents, who were just like blue collar, very great giving people, and did anything they could for us and lended us money to, catch up on our bills because we were about to be evicted from our place. And I was a few months behind on our car payment and all that. And they literally helped us feed our kids. And as a father, that was really hard to deal with, knowing that I couldn't support my own family. But my wife and I both enjoyed photography a lot, and I'd gone to school for it, and I never wanted to do it for work because I was so afraid it would ruin my passion for it. But my wife is usually right about things, I've learned. So she's like, let's shoot together. Let's try to do something. And we had an opportunity to photograph a wedding, and just fell in love with it and fell in love with being together while we were doing it. And we just kind of made the crazy decision of, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start a wedding photography company. We had no knowledge of how to do it. We were still learning how to shoot weddings and tell stories. We only had one camera, one lens. Kind of a lot of things were against us, and we decided to pursue that, and that was 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago, And since then, we've built a successful business and started another business 2 years ago, which is a photo booth company, and that's doing really well. So how Gethrr came about is, when we got to a point where we were able to have some comfort in our lives, we knew that we needed to kind of do for others what was done to us, which was, getting the little bit of help we needed just to get by. So, Gethrr is inspired by my wife's parents, and just everything that they did for us. And even though it wasn't a lot, it made a huge impact and literally changed our lives. So, and in creating Gethrr, we also figured, hey, let's solve some of our issues with the nonprofit world and how things work. So, Gethrr is literally just a network of people who give through a monthly program. Membership start at $1 a month, and each month we bring all of our money together and just do projects to help people. It's not about solving a specific problem. It's just about doing good and trying to build a community around that and making it accessible for people. We prove to people every month that $1 makes a difference. I'm sorry. No.
I just love that. I love that. When I was a kid, I used to hear these feed the hungry things, and they used to be little boxes, and you can give like 50 cents or something. And I used to be leery because I used to go like, is any of the money, whether it's 50 cents or $50, really going to the organization? And what I like about what you guys are doing is it's just average American citizens doing it themselves, just adding $1 here, $5 there, $10, whatever it is you can give, and bringing it together. And it's not some faraway, distant, organization where you don't know where your money's going, and it's really helping people. So I really, really love that.
Thank you. And we've tried to make it a point to always share every story from every project, so we can, really connect our members to their donation, which I think is something that gets lost in translation a lot with bigger organizations.
Yeah. And you know what I'm picking up from you? This is so good you're going there, because what I've found a lot with the business owners that have come on is they've reached a pinnacle of success, and it's glorious and it's beautiful. But like one guy came on my show, he has I think a $20 million business, but he said, the first 10 years was all struggle. It's like, I didn't see a hell of a lot of cash flow. It's only now that I'm 20 years in that I'm starting to live the fruits of my labor. And I don't think often business owners realize when they get started that this is going to be a long road, and that, if you keep at it and you keep your focus and you have something, a valuable need that people need and want, that it can work, but it's going to take time to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that we're also very intentional about is not deferring our happiness and not deferring, going on adventures, which is something we're passionate about, and travel. And, we make it a priority. So we spend money, going on trips with our kids and just trying new things. And, I think it's easy for people to kind of put off and, say, oh, when I retire, that's when I'm going to, be able to travel the world, when I'm not mobile enough and don't have enough money. So, whereas I feel like that whole model and frame of mind has changed in the past 10 years. So we're kind of trying to live by that. And
Well,
anyway.
you're also a representation and an inspiration for anyone out there who's been at maybe a desk job forever and feels that the myth that we've been fed that you got to wait to enjoy life when you retire. Because I worked at a corporate job for 25 years, and you go into the office every Monday and all you hear is people complaining how miserable their lives are, and they're in a mode where they feel there is no way other than this. We got to wait to enjoy life when we're 65, and hence do they tell us that we're going to be like miserable and on 10 medications and probably not able to enjoy it? Not really.
Right. Yeah. I completely agree. And even for those people, because, we have friends who aren't necessarily happy about the work they do, which is okay. I think it's important to enjoy it to some extent, but I always tell people, just do what makes you happy. And it doesn't mean you have to make money doing it, but I feel like a lot of times businesses come from that, and your ability to really contribute and give back and find what you're meant to do comes from just trying new things and doing what you do. And, a year ago, I started doing these interactive chalkboard portraits, drawings with my daughters while they were at piano practice in a church, and like just totally innocent and I've been doing them every week, and now, we're toying around with the idea of, hey, maybe we make this something we offer to others. And, 'cause I'm working on a commission piece right now, actually. And, it's just, I just love drawing, and I love, the creative process. And I love, working with my kids and having them say like, Daddy, I want to play with a unicorn. And I'm like, all right, let's do a unicorn, and like totally random, but it's something we enjoy and it's fun, and it, potentially could turn into something.
Yeah, and what's awesome about it is, and I'm doing what I absolutely, completely, totally love, and that's connecting and interviewing people. I didn't even know it's something I could do, I'd be good at, until I was in my 40s, and it kind of happened seemingly by accident, but I don't believe in accidents.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. And, to kind of talk about our wedding photography a little bit, we, we're the only photographers that I know of, and definitely in our community in the Philadelphia area, that limit what we shoot. We start rejecting clients after 30 weddings because, first of all, it's a lot of work and energy, but we want to make sure that we're giving our best to our clients, but also still having a life and, and having a good balance, because for us, money's important to an extent, and it, who doesn't like more? But, it's just more about living and being present in your life and doing the things you enjoy versus like, I'm going to just grind. And, especially with kids, my kids are already 8, they're going to be 9 in May. And it goes so fast. And I think a lot of parents miss out on a lot of their kids' childhood because they're just working their butts off. So, we've totally redesigned the way that we run our business to suit what makes sense for us. And it changed the whole approach that people have with us too. Whereas before it was like, oh, I hope they like us and they like our work and we're in their price range. But now it's like, they also want to make sure that, we like them, because now that's a part of the conversation. So it's a much different atmosphere that we deal with now versus like 3 or 4 years ago.
Working for your business instead of the business working for you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's just like the same thing of, working on your business instead of in your business.
Yeah.
Same. Yep.
Yeah. And so how have you found a balance where do you also have staff that helps you systematize so you don't have to work as hard? I mean, because I think that would be helpful to some of our listeners who are struggling, feel like I can only do it myself. How have you done it?
So with our wedding photography, we also have associates who photograph for us, so that kind of allows us to do less there. And we also have an editor that does most of the editing for us. So, that's like 2 full days of work a week that we save right there. And for our photo booth company, I rarely ever go out and do an event myself. So I have like 4 attendants at this point who go out, do everything, and just bring the booth back at the end. So I've been able to, create some basic systems that allow, give people opportunities to make money for themselves, and obviously give me more time back so I can devote it more to my family and together and these other things that are important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And from the time in which things were really hard in the beginning, and your wonderful the wife's parents that helped you out, I can relate, and I'm sure a lot of other folks can, because I'd gone through bankruptcy with my first business, and it's a kind of not fun place to be. What was the moment that was kind of the cusp where you saw things starting to transform from, oh my God, struggle every month, to now things are starting to flow? What was happening in between that transition?
So I was still, for the very first couple of years in our business trying to build it, I was still going from job to job, and I knew that we were close to being able to support ourselves solely through the photography when the company I worked for at the time threatened to fire me if they didn't shut down our website. So it was a really weird situation, and it was incredibly terrifying, to think about making that jump, because there's always a point, and rarely, I believe, do businesses just take off so it's an easy transition. You'd be like, oh, screw that. I think most small businesses, it's like you have to take that leap of faith at some point. And I got fired from that job. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it put a fire under my butt, even more than I already had. And we just were like, well, this is what we're doing now, so let's make it work. And it did.
Yeah, it's amazing how I had heard this one woman say that she had a big presentation to do, and she would generally take about 3 months to do like a 40-minute presentation. Well, she got a call, and I think it's Marie Forleo. She got a call from Tony Robbins that said, "I need you to come out tomorrow afternoon, fly out here and do a presentation with me. Can you do it?" And she's like, yes, but she didn't have one lined up. So in 4 hours, she created a amazing presentation that Tony Robbins said was the best he's ever done with a co-host.
Wow.
And she did in 4 hours instead of 4 or 3 months or whatever it was, prior. And it goes to show you that sometimes to fire up the butt or something, or that in that situation that okay, it's all or nothing, that just transforms everything.
Yeah, I think having not having an opportunity to have fear, I did. I was at a conference 4 years ago, and I had the idea for Gethrr at the time, and just trying to figure it out, because being a photographer is very different than starting a nonprofit. So I literally knew nothing, but I had an opportunity to give basically a 5-minute pitch about what I was thinking about doing and how it would work and all that, and I couldn't prepare. I couldn't do anything. I've never spoken in front of people. And I was able to, just, give this 5-10 minute talk that, when I really, go through more of the details of my story, I tend to get emotional, and, some of the things that, early on that I experienced in moving forward with the nonprofit, which was incredibly difficult, and no one was really supportive as far as actually helping make it happen. So I asked a lot of people for help, and I got a lot of no's. But just kind of being forced into that situation, saying, "Well, who cares?" and just putting myself out there and being vulnerable and open. And I had people come up to me after and offer to help me, and some people were very, instrumental in becoming part of, what I was trying to create. And even the founder of that conference is on the board of our nonprofit now. So it was just amazing, kind of putting myself out there and being scared as heck, but not having time to worry about it.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued about that, Michael. Why were more people less supportive about your non-for-profit, it seems, than, even helping you with the original, your profit business? Why would that be?
So I'm speaking more specifically to the lawyers that I worked with. I got some pro bono help. Just having conversations with other nonprofits, trying to get some ideas or some sort of direction. Because at the time, and I'm pretty sure there may be a couple organizations similar to mine now, but there wasn't really anything like this. I was told more than anything else that we would never become a 501c3 because we're not trying to solve a particular issue. Because we're more about just doing good together and just making it easy. And it's just as much about the person who's giving versus, as well as the person who's receiving. And just, I went through 2 lawyers, and then finally I was like, well, I guess I can't work, I'm not going to pursue this avenue anymore, and just try it. And, it took 2 years to get it off the ground, and it took another year after that to get a 501c3 status. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that you're bringing this up, because I think a lot of times we have this calling within us and our spirit and our soul. And I know I had that once I got started heavily and following my call with Savvy here, is that certain things you'll do in your life, like creating Gethrr for you, you'll be told by everyone around you, this is nuts, it's not possible, you don't have the money, it's not the right time, whatever the excuses might be. But you just know it's something you must do. And it's wonderful that you stayed the track regardless of any naysayers, because I think that is something that will come up for most people who are doing something of great good and something that is a great calling, something that's not just, your average, just getting by.
Right. Like I know in my heart that I needed to put this into the world. And even getting the first project done was such a crazy situation. And, ended up we ended up putting a lot of our own money into everything to get it going. And but I think most great ideas, and I'm stealing this from a book from a guy named Richie Norton, who's a friend of ours, who wrote a book called The Power of Starting Something Stupid. And it's a fantastic book. And I always tell people, be careful, because if you're going to read it, it's going to make you do something. But, it just kind of goes through and profiles different companies and the story behind it, and how it started off as a stupid idea and ended up not being that way. The most well-known one being the story of Amazon. Mm-hmm. And, it's just kind of like, don't let that deter you just because no one else can see it. And, even if you're pursuing something and you're years into it and it is failing, I guarantee you're going to learn a lot more in that time than you would doing anything else. Mm-hmm. And you'll meet new people, and it might direct you and have you pivot to something that maybe you were meant to do anyway.
Yeah, that is a really awesome point there. When I got started with the financial consulting business, I was just sick of being either laid off or my department being downsized, and you have to go somewhere else and start over and take a $20,000 cut or something. And after the fourth time in 5 years, my boss said, "Hey, just do it yourself, man. You've done it for 20 years. You created a wonderful results. I'm sure it'll be a piece of cake." He was wrong. He was so wrong. But what was awesome about it is that by taking the leap and starting my own financial consulting business, is that it led me to do now what I'm doing. And had I not taken that leap, and if someone out there is like, I don't know what to do next, but let me just go here, that one step, doing that first thing, can lead you to, your greatest passion or some great thing you can do in the world that you would have never thought or experienced had you not even just taken that first step.
Exactly. I think what a lot of it comes down to is just literally taking action. Mm-hmm. Do something. Most people never do anything.
Yeah.
So many people, I can have a conversation with 10 people and 9 of them will be like, "Oh, I've always wanted to try this or start this or do this." But so many people don't. And there's that fear of failure and fear of not knowing what you're doing. And I mean, from starting our photography business to our photo booth company to our nonprofit, I've never known what I was doing. I've always done, right by our clients and just tried to do what I thought was right, in every situation, and just keep pushing. And that's, been enough for us at least.
Yeah, because in essence, you're using your talents and skills, and you're giving the best you have at that moment. I know when I got started with Savvy, after about 9 months, people started to say, "Can I do advertising on your show?" I said, "Fine. I don't know what you charge for it." I did some research, came up with some numbers. People paid it. But now when I listen to the advertising I did, or even the shows I did in the beginning, to what I do now, it's almost a little embarrassing. I cringe, go, "Ugh. People pay me for that," but I was doing what I could then. Of course, now as our audience has grown to 500,000 people, we're not charging the same either. We charge people a pittance for advertising back when we started. So, it's the same thing. You give what you have, and you give your greatest amount of gifts and talents at that moment. And if people see the value and they pay you, it's all good. It's a win-win.
Yep. Yeah, I would relate that to looking at weddings that I shot 7-8 years ago. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, I want to apologize to my clients. I'm so sorry that you hired me.
No, but I love our talk today. It was so wonderful, the points you shared. I don't want us to go away without people finding out more about you, your wonderful businesses, and Gethrr. Tell them.
Yeah, sure. So our wedding company is called M2 Photo. So if you want to check us out, it's m2photo.co, C-O. And then Gethrr is GETHRR.org. You can check us out, see projects we've done, sign up for a newsletter. If you have questions, let me know. And also, if anyone knows anyone who's in a difficult spot and could use a little bit of help, let us know. We're always looking for people to help.
Oh, that's fabulous. That is really, really awesome. Now, also, before we leave here, I'm thinking, because you've gone through difficult stretches, if there's someone out there listening and they're going through what you were going through 8 years ago and they feel like they want to toss in the towel and just give up, what would be your words of advice to them?
I would say that fast forward to when you're 80 or on your deathbed. Mm-hmm. If you don't, if you feel like you're going to regret not pushing through it, then you keep pushing. But if you're okay with giving up and throwing in and know that you tried enough and you won't regret it, then move on to something else. But if I go back to starting Gethrr, not knowing anything, I knew I would regret it if I didn't figure it out. So that's why I'm still doing it today.
Well, that is a wonderful piece of advice. And I want to thank you again, Michael, for coming to Savvy Central Radio and sharing all your gifts and talents today.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
Savvy Central Radio is home to over 100,000 listeners per month globally and runs in syndication on 8 AM and FM platforms, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out more about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out to the world, call 718 area code 713-2289 or email at savvycentralradio@gmail.com.